He was just changing his Wi-Fi password and ended up with cops on his lawn. Darius Coleman wasn't looking for trouble. He liked quiet mornings, clean lawns, and being left alone. But one ordinary afternoon, a glance out a neighbor's window turned his life upside down. A call was made. An assumption became an accusation. And what the police discovered? No one saw it coming. If you're into real emotional stories with shocking twists, hit that subscribe and follow for more. The air was still that Thursday afternoon, warm and humming with the quiet buzz of suburban life. Lawns were trimmed, cars sat idle in driveways, and somewhere down Crestwood Lane, Darius Coleman leaned against the siding of his house, staring. To the glowing screen of his phone, to any outsider, he looked normal. A man checking something online, maybe texting, maybe browsing. But to Melanie Foster, watching from her kitchen window just across the street, it didn't feel normal. Not at all. She squinted, watching his fingers move quickly across the screen. Something about it, his stance, his stillness, his focus, stirred something uneasy in her gut. He's always out there, she muttered to herself, wrapping her fingers tightly around her mug. Always on that damn phone, never talks to anyone. She didn't have any proof, but she didn't need it. Not in her mind. Darius had always kept to himself, skipped the community potlucks, didn't wave, didn't smile much either. People said he was polite, quiet, but polite could hide a lot of things. What if he's doing something shady? That thought hit her like a cold splash of water. She knew what she had to do. She grabbed her phone and hesitated for just a second, then dialed. When? What's your emergency? Yes, hi. I'd like to report something suspicious, she said, her voice tight, almost breathless. My neighbor, he's out there doing something weird with his phone. He's been standing there a while, just tapping, looking around. The dispatcher asked for details, but she didn't have many. He just looks off, like he's hiding something. Meanwhile, Darius was deep in thought. His internet had been slow lately. Video calls buffering, music skipping, even his work. Files taking forever to sync. At first, he blamed the provider. But today, he got fed up. He'd decided to dig into the router settings. What he found chilled him. There was a device connected to his Wi-Fi network. Not his. Not a random jumble. Of letters and numbers either. The label was clear. Crestwood ISO 1. That wasn't his phone, not his laptop, not his TV. And he lived alone. No guests, no roommates. No one but me. With a growing sense of unease, he tapped the screen and kicked every unfamiliar device off the network. Then, to make sure it never happened again, he reset the password. Simple, right? But as he stood outside, waiting for the signal bar to climb, he had no idea that a woman across the street was watching every move. Eyes narrowed, heart pounding, phone already dialing for backup. Back inside her house, Melanie paced. She had no idea what he was doing, but she felt it. He was up to something. She could feel it in her bones. What if he was hacking into someone's Wi-Fi or worse, planning something dangerous? Her neighborhood had always been safe, peaceful, the kind of place where people left their doors unlocked. She couldn't take any chances. Just send someone to check, please, she begged. It's probably nothing, but I have a bad feeling. A few blocks away, the police cruiser's engine revved. Two officers, Detective Luis Navarro and Officer Bell Carter, exchanged a quick glance as they read the dispatch note. Suspicious activity, Navarro said flatly, folding the printout. Guy on his phone. Doesn't sound like much. Could be nothing, Carter nodded. Could be something. They flipped on the sirens. Darius had just typed in the last character of his new Wi-Fi password when he heard it. The sirens. First faint. Then louder. Then unmistakably close. He looked up, brows furrowed, just in time to see the black and white cruiser slow to a crawl. Then stopped directly in front of his driveway. Two officers stepped out. Darius's heart sank. No way. Seriously? He stayed still. Calm. He'd done nothing wrong, but he'd read too many stories to take anything lightly. Navarro walked forward, hand resting close. not on his holstered weapon. "Sir," he said, voice steady but firm, "we received a report of suspicious activity at this address. Can you tell us what you're doing?" Darius blinked. Suspicious? He glanced at his phone, then back at the officer. "I'm resetting my Wi-Fi password. Someone's been mooching off my internet." He tried to sound neutral, respectful, not irritated, not defensive. But inside, something twisted. This was his house, his driveway, his Wi-Fi. And now he was explaining himself like a criminal? Navarro raised an eyebrow. "You live here?" That one hit deeper than it should have. His name was on the mailbox. His car was parked right there. He'd lived here for 3 years. "Yeah," Darius said, folding his arms. "I live here." From behind them, a voice rang out. "He's lying." It was Melanie, standing on her porch, now, watching, arms crossed like a judge, jury, and executioner. He's always outside doing something shady, always on his phone, looking around like he's spying. Darius turned slowly, eyes locked on hers. "Spying? I was checking my router," he said flatly. "Because someone I don't know has been using my Wi-Fi." "Oh, sure," she scoffed. "And I'm just supposed to believe that?" The tension crackled in the air. Carter glanced at Navarro. Navarro sighed, his patience thinning. "Sir, would you mind if we had a quick look at your router settings, just to clear this up?" Darius clenched his jaw. He didn't owe anyone anything, but he knew how fast things could spiral. "Fine," he muttered. "Come see for yourself." Detective Luis Navarro had knocked on a lot of doors in his 20 years on the force. Some calls were nonsense. Others turned your stomach. But this felt strange from the moment they pulled up. The guy, Darius Coleman, stood calm, not fidgeting, not hiding. No sweat on his brow, no wild eyes, no signs of someone caught in the act. Just a man with a phone, in his driveway. Still, Navarro had learned never to assume. Too many calls started with, "It's probably nothing," and ended in tragedy. He glanced over at Officer Belle Carter as they approached the man. She gave a tight nod, her hand hovering. "By her notepad, not her weapon." "Sir," Navarro called out, leveling his voice, "we got a report about some suspicious activity. Mind telling us what you're doing?" The man looked confused, brows slightly raised. "I'm resetting my Wi-Fi password," he said, holding up his phone. "Someone's been using it without permission." His voice was calm, even polite, but there was something beneath it. A flicker of "here we go again." Navarro had seen it before. Black men who knew the script. Hands visible. Tone respectful. No sudden moves. Made his stomach twist even if he couldn't say it out loud. Before he could respond, a woman's voice cut through the air. "He's lying!" Navarro turned. Melanie Foster stood on her porch like she owned the block. Arms folded. Jaw set. That familiar mix of fear and righteousness in her eyes. "He's always sneaking around, always on his phone," she said. "Now he's been standing there for 10 minutes, just tapping." Navarro glanced at Carter. The tension just jumped. A notch. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "do you have any evidence that Mr. Coleman has done anything illegal?" She hesitated. Of course she didn't. I just know something's not right," she said, her voice shrinking but still clinging to certainty. Navarro felt it in his gut, the balance of this moment. One wrong word, one sharp breath, and this could turn sideways. He turned back to Darius. "Sir, would you be willing to show us what's going on with your router settings? It'll help us clear this up quickly." Darius's jaw tightened, his lips pressed into a line, then a slow exhale. "Fine," he said, unlocking his phone. "Here, look." Melanie watched from behind the porch rail, heart hammering in her chest. She had meant well, right? She hadn't expected it to go this far. She just had a feeling. The way he kept to himself, the way he avoided neighborhood events. She'd never seen him laugh or wave or even make eye contact. That's not normal, she'd told herself. She had told her sister once, "That man gives me the creeps." Her sister had rolled her eyes and said, "Maybe he just likes privacy." But privacy, Melanie had always thought, could be dangerous. Now, watching two officers scroll through a stranger's phone, something sour twisted in her stomach. What if I'm wrong? And worse, what if he's not? Officer Carter leaned in over Darius's shoulder. She scanned the screen carefully, eyes narrowing. Navarro followed her gaze. A list of connected devices popped up. Then they both saw it. Crestwood I-01. It didn't belong to Darius. And it wasn't some default router label. This was deliberate, named, planted. Navarro's eyes met Carter's. Her expression shifted from neutral to alert. "This one's been connected for a while," Carter said. "And it's still active." Navarro looked back at Darius. "You said someone's been using your Wi-Fi?" Darius nodded. "But I don't think they were just stealing bandwidth. I checked the logs earlier. They've been connecting constantly, non-stop, like someone's watching something." Carter stepped back. "You think they've been watching you?" Darius looked up. "I think they've been watching a lot more than just me." Navarro's pulse ticked up. This wasn't just a neighbor dispute anymore. This was starting to sound like a potential surveillance breach. He turned toward Melanie. She looked pale now, her arms uncrossed, her breath shallow. "What do you mean, watching?" she asked. Darius's voice was low, even. "I mean, someone's been logging into my home security system. Watching my cameras, maybe watching yours too." A cold wind seemed to pass through the street, even though the afternoon sun still blazed above them. Melanie's throat tightened. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Was this why her lights flickered last week? Why her baby monitor made that weird noise the other night? No. Stop. Don't jump to conclusions. But wasn't that what she had just done with Darius? Navarro straightened. "All right," he said, more serious now. "Let's get inside. I want to see exactly what we're dealing with." Darius didn't argue. He turned toward his house, unlocking the door. Melanie stood frozen on her steps. She hadn't meant for any of this, but the truth. She wasn't sure what scared her more, that Darius was innocent or that he might be right. The moment Darius stepped back into his house, the air inside felt different, tighter, not just from the presence of two uniformed officers trailing close behind him, but from something colder, an invisible weight pressing against his chest, a feeling he hadn't been able to name until now. Violation. He'd always seen his home as a haven, quiet, private, his space. But now it felt like someone had been inside, watching, listening, breathing down his neck without ever knocking. On the door. He set his phone on the dining table and reached for his laptop. Fingers flying over the keyboard, he mirrored the router settings onto the bigger screen. Then he pointed. "There. You see it? Crestwood I-01, still connected." Detective Navarro leaned in. Officer Carter moved around the table, peering over his shoulder. Darius clicked another tab. "Here's the activity log. Look, this thing hasn't disconnected in over 48 hours. Even at night, especially at night." Carter frowned. "Can you identify what kind of device it is?" "I tried," Darius muttered, his voice getting tighter. "No clear label, but—" He paused, then clicked again. A new window opened. And everyone in the room froze. The screen filled with a live video feed, a dim hallway, a closed door. Then, movement. A shadow passed across the frame. Melanie gasped. "What is that?" Darius didn't answer. He clicked again. Another feed. A living room. The camera shifted slightly, then zoomed onto a coffee table, a cereal bowl, a toddler's toy. Melanie's voice trembled. That looks like—" One more. Click, one more feed. A bedroom, floral curtains, a quilted comforter, and a woman's purse sitting on the dresser. Melanie took a step back, eyes wide. "That's my house," she whispered. No one said anything for several seconds. The only sound was the hum of Darius's laptop fan. He turned slowly in his chair, locking eyes with her. "You still think I was the problem?" Melanie's face crumpled. Her hands trembled as she reached for the back of a chair, steadying herself. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't ask, Darius replied. You just assumed. Navarro's voice cut through the silence. Mr. Coleman, are these the only camera feeds connected? Darius shook his head slowly. No. I have 4 cameras in my house. Only one of them is showing up here. He clicked. Another tab. IP logs. Dozens of entries, each one stamped with a timestamp and network tag. Some were local, some weren't. Some looked disturbingly familiar. This isn't just me, Darius said, voice growing darker. This network's reaching into other homes, other cameras. He looked up again. Whoever's doing this, Ned, they're watching all of us. Navarro felt the hair on his arms rise. He'd seen cybercrime before, stolen identities, card fraud, fake Wi-Fi hotspots. But this was something else, personal, close, dangerous. Can you trace where the data's going? He asked. Darius nodded, already working the keyboard. I'm not a hacker, but I know enough about network logs. Lines of code, IP addresses, and location pings danced across the screen. Then, his fingers froze. No, that can't be right. Carter leaned in. What is it? Darius turned the screen. It's not being sent to some random server. It's local. Right here in the neighborhood. Melanie's breath hitched. No. Navarro stepped closer, his voice lower now. Can you pinpoint the source? Darius nodded slowly. If I cross-reference timestamps with signal strength? Give me a minute. They all stood in tense silence as he worked. Click, tap, swipe, then he stopped. His face went pale. That's Brandon's house, he said flatly. Melanie's knees buckled. She gripped the edge of the table. Her nephew? No. Brandon was quiet, sure. Obsessed with tech, yes, but spying, hacking, watching families in their homes? Are you sure? She asked, voice paper-thin. Darius didn't look at her. The connection strength was strongest when your network overlapped mine. The timestamps line up. The IP is tied to your address. Melanie's mouth opened, then closed. Brandon wouldn't do this, she muttered. He's a good kid. He's always in his room. He doesn't even talk to people. Exactly, Carter said quietly. Melanie flinched. Navarro straightened, already reaching for his radio. We need cybercrime on this, now, and I want officers watching every network signal on this block. He looked at Carter. We're going. Genius. Melanie didn't argue. She couldn't. Every step toward her own front door felt heavier than the last. She opened it. Called upstairs. Brandon, can you come down here, please? Silence. Then the creak of a chair, footsteps, a shadow on the stairs. Brandon Foster appeared at the top landing, wiry, pale, barefoot, his hands fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. His eyes flicked from Melanie to Navarro, to Carter and back. What's going on? Navarro stepped forward. Brandon Foster, we need to talk. There's been a serious breach in multiple home networks. We have reason to believe it's coming from inside this house. Brandon's face barely changed, but his fingers curled inward slowly, like he was squeezing something invisible. That's ridiculous, he said, trying to laugh. You think I'm doing something? Carter's hand hovered near her belt. Mind if we check your laptop? Brandon's jaw tightened. You don't have a warrant. We can get one, Navarro said, stepping closer. But we're giving you a chance right now. The air stretched thin. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Brandon exhaled. It wasn't anything serious. It was just a joke. At first, Melanie blinked. Brandon? I just wanted to see if I could get into someone's Wi-Fi. He continued, voice rapid now. I wasn't hurting anyone. You were watching people, Brandon, Melanie snapped. He looked at her, and for a second, just a second, there was regret. I didn't mean for it to go this far, he whispered. Navarro stepped in. Brandon Foster, you're under arrest for unauthorized access of a computer network and unlawful surveillance. Carter pulled out the cuffs. Brandon didn't resist. He looked at the floor, shoulders hunched, wrists bound. Melanie turned away, her throat tightening. She couldn't even look at him. Back on the sidewalk, Darius watched as the officers led Brandon to the squad car. He didn't say anything, he didn't need to. Navarro paused beside him. "You were right," he said. "If you hadn't caught this, we might never have known." Darius let out a breath, slow, controlled. Then he turned just once to Melanie, still standing frozen on her porch. "I was changing my Wi-Fi password," he said quietly. "That's it. And you called the cops on me." Melanie's voice cracked. "I was wrong." "I don't need an apology," Darius said. He looked away. "Just do better." Brandon was gone. The patrol car had pulled away minutes ago, its flashing lights fading into the distance. The street fell into silence once again. But this time, the silence wasn't peaceful. It was heavy. It hung in the air like a storm that had just passed but left everything soaked and broken in its wake. Melanie stood on her porch, arms wrapped tightly around herself. The breeze stirred her blouse, but she didn't move. Couldn't. Her eyes stayed fixed on the spot where her nephew had stood, cuffed, pale, trembling. Inside her chest, guilt gnawed at her like rust. She had called the police on Darius, a man who hadn't done anything wrong, a man who had, in fact, exposed the truth that no one else saw coming. She had been so sure, so certain in her gut, but she had been looking in the wrong direction the entire time. Across the street, Darius sat, alone on his front steps. His laptop was inside, closed now. The list of IP logs and camera feeds no longer on display, but the images, they lingered. He ran a hand over his face and let out a slow, shaky breath. He was tired, not just from today, but from what it represented. Being judged, being watched, being feared, not for what he had done, but simply for existing, for being different, for not smiling enough or joining the neighborhood potluck. He'd always preferred solitude. But now, that solitude had turned into suspicion. And yet, it was that same quiet watchfulness that had helped him notice what others didn't. He was the one who dug deeper. The one who didn't let the strange Wi-Fi label go unchecked. The one who caught it, not for praise, not to prove a point, just to protect what was his. And in doing so, he had protected everyone else too. Later that evening, Melanie knocked on his door. Darius opened it slowly. He said nothing. She didn't look the same. Her face was softer, her voice smaller. "I know you said you didn't want an apology," she whispered, "but I need to say it anyway." He didn't stop her, just waited. "I assumed the worst of you," she said, "because you kept to yourself, because you were different, and I let my fear speak louder than the facts. You didn't just catch what was happening. You stopped something that could have gone on for years." Her voice cracked. "And I blamed you." "I'm sorry, Darius," he nodded. "I hear you." She looked down. "If there's ever anything I can do to make it right." He didn't answer right away. "Then, next time," he said, "just ask." She nodded slowly, then turned to leave. The neighborhood didn't talk about Brandon much after that. People avoided eye contact when they passed Melanie's house. There were whispers, of course, but no one really knew what to say. Darius didn't want attention. He didn't want a parade, but something had shifted. Neighbors who had once looked past him now nodded when he walked by. One even dropped off a pie. Someone else asked if he'd consider helping with their home security setup. And Darius? He accepted. It all, cautiously. Not because he needed validation, but because something had changed in him too. He had every right to be angry, to stay silent, to stay hidden. But he didn't. Because he'd seen firsthand how silence lets danger grow, and how assumptions unchecked can turn into something far worse than a simple misunderstanding. We all carry stories about the people around us. Sometimes those stories are written in fear, not truth. Darius Coleman didn't want to be a hero, but he became one by trusting his instincts and staying calm when the Sitka world turned against him. Melanie Foster thought she was protecting her neighborhood, but she learned that true safety doesn't come from assumptions. It comes from listening, from asking, from seeing people, not just judging them. Because when we make someone the villain without facts, we risk missing the real danger hiding in plain sight. So next time you feel that urge to jump to conclusions, pause, look closer, ask questions. You might be surprised who the real threat is and who's actually been protecting you all along.